Electron transport chain operates in inner mitochondrial membrane. So this is mitochondria. It has outer membrane and inner membrane. So this electron transport chain operates in inner membrane of mitochondria. We can see this is intermembrane space and this is matrix of mitochondria. So here I have drawn inner mitochondrial membrane. This space is matrix and this space is intermembrane space. Electron transport chain involves overall 5 complexes, which we will discuss now in detail. So first complex is associated with oxidation of NADH. So this NADH is oxidized to form NAD and 2 hydrogen ions. Now what happens? These hydrogen ions are picked up by complex 1 and 2 electrons are also generated. So this is complex 1, flavin mononucleotide. This is also known as NADH dehydrogenase complex. This is our complex 1. Now what happens? These hydrogen ions and then electrons form 2 hydrogen atoms. These hydrogen atoms again get oxidized to transport 2 hydrogen ions into intermembrane space and electrons are given to FES. This FES when gains electrons, 2 electrons, this FES gets reduced. So this is reduced FES. And now what happens? This reduced FES, it gives electrons to ubiquinone. And in this process, it gets reoxidized to form FES. And electrons are given to ubiquinone. This ubiquinone picks up 2 hydrogen ions from matrix. This is complex 2. Complex 2 is also known as succinate dehydrogenase complex. This succinate dehydrogenase complex is associated with reoxidation of FADH2. And these hydrogen ions which are formed by reoxidation are picked up by ubiquinone. Now this ubiquinone becomes ubiquinol. This ubiquinol gets reoxidized to form ubiquinone, and in this oxidation process it transports hydrogen ions into intermembrane space and electrons are given to cytochrome B. Cytochrome BC1 is complex 3. Complex 3. Complex 3 is cytochrome BC1 complex. So this cytochrome B receives 2 electrons, then it gives its electrons to FES. This FES, it gives electrons to FES. When this FES gains electrons, it gets converted into reduced FES. This FES, this FES becomes reduced FES, and when this reduced FES transports electrons to ubiquinone, then it gets reoxidized to form FES and electrons are gained by ubiquinone, 2 electrons. And then this ubiquinone picks up 2 hydrogen ions from matrix and it gets reduced to ubiquinol. And it gets, now it is reoxidized to form ubiquinone. In this process, hydrogen ions are transported into intermembrane space and electrons are given to cytochrome C1. Cytochrome C1 then gives its electrons to cytochrome C, which is attached towards outer side of inner membrane, and it acts as mobile carrier of electrons. Then this is our complex 3, cytochrome B C1 complex, and then through cytochrome C electrons are transported to complex 4, which is cytochrome AA3 complex. The cytochrome AA3 complex is complex 4. This complex 4 is also known as cytochrome C oxidase. Because what is actually this complex doing? There is cytochrome C. This cytochrome C gives its electrons to cytochrome AA3 complex. So in this process, the cytochrome C gets oxidized and this complex gets reduced. This complex 4 ultimately gives electrons to complex 5. Complex 5 is actually ATP synthase enzyme. This ATP synthase enzyme has two units, F0 unit and F1 unit. And what happens? This F1 unit, F0 unit acts as a transmembrane channel. It breaks down proton gradient which is created during this electron transport. Electrons and these protons are constantly transported from matrix to intermembrane space. So what happens? Concentration of hydrogen ions is maintained lower in matrix and higher in intermembrane space. This proton gradient needs to be broken down. So this breakdown of proton gradient is done by ATP synthase enzyme. So these hydrogen ions are transferred through this F0 unit to F1 unit, and this transfer of hydrogen ions into F1 unit causes a conformational change in F1. F1 unit is catalytic unit which causes ATP formation. So what happens? ADP plus inorganic phosphate, ATP molecules are synthesized. ATP molecule is formed. So for each ATP molecule, 2 hydrogen ions are transported through F0 unit. And what happens? This ATP synthase is complex 5. And what else is happening? These electrons and protons which reach at this point, these need to be removed. So how are these removed? 2 electrons plus 2 protons and molecular oxygen is required. Then what happens? Water molecule is formed. So oxygen, here we see oxygen is required in the last step. So this oxygen is considered as the ultimate acceptor of electrons and protons, and there occurs formation of water molecule. So this electron transport chain ultimately leads to formation of ATP, and this ATP formation requires oxidation and reduction. So this process of ATP synthesis is called oxidative phosphorylation. This is oxidative phosphorylation.